Some stories arrive late, but never too late. For many adults, ADHD is discovered not in childhood, but decades later, after careers, after relationships, after years of self doubt. Research suggests that 2.5 to 4% of the adult population lives with ADHD, and most were never diagnosed as kids. When the label comes, it explains a lot, but it also stirs grief and also thoughts about what could have been. Welcome to Neuro Rebel, where we explore neurodivergence through the lens of lived experience, rigorous research, and unapologetic truth telling. I'm Anita, your host, and today we're diving deep into late ADHD diagnosis through the eyes of Oliver, a man whose journey from East Germany to the Caribbean became a journey from confusion to clarity. Oliver's story illuminates something profound: that anger often masks overwhelm, that perfectionism can be both a gift and a burden, and that understanding your brain's wiring can transform not just how you work, but how you love, how you live, and how you forgive yourself for all the years that you didn't know. This is a conversation about recognition, revelation, and the radical act of learning how to see your differences as features and not as flaws. Oliver, I want to thank you for being here on Neuro Rebel. Your story is powerful, and not just because of the challenges you faced, but because of the honesty and reflection you bring to it. You have lived across continents, built a career in customer support, and created a life here in the Caribbean where you found the love of your life. And alongside all of that, you've been navigating ADHD and finding your diagnosis late in life. And I'm really glad we get to explore that journey together today, how ADHD has revealed itself, how it shaped your life, and how therapy gave you a new lens to live in your authentic self. So, welcome to Neuro Rebel.
Thank you. I appreciate the warm welcome and I'm very excited to be here. Thank you so much.
Great. Let's dive right in. Let's start with therapy, which is how you came to your late diagnosis. You first went to therapy because of conflict, snapping, reacting fast, feeling overwhelmed with your partner. You went in looking for answers about anger and came out with ADHD on the table. So, when you first started therapy, what did you think was wrong? And how did ADHD enter the conversation?
I did not know what was wrong, right? So I was at the point of my life where I realized that this problem had occurred various times before. But it's obviously it is something in you and it is something bad in general, right? People would see it bad. You get angry very quick. It's not something where you like to confront yourself with. So it takes a while to understand it. Just look for help. Maybe there's someone that can help you, right? And literally the first session in therapy, the very first session, the very first hour, obviously a therapist asks you, "Look, so why are you here? Why are you here?" And the first sentence is, "Yeah, I think I have an anger problem, or I often I'm exploding relatively quick. I'm exaggerating things, and yeah, I'm getting angry often, and that this affects my partnership, and I want to find out what can I do." Right. So it's a very general approach. And I was not at all thinking that this is anywhere related to ADHS.
Okay, so tell me more about what happened when your therapist said, I think you might want to be evaluated, or I think it's a good idea for you to talk to an evaluator to see if this is ADHD. What was your reaction? What were your thoughts?
It actually took us quite a long time. Therapy is not, it's not about this 1 hour, like in the doctor checks your heart rate and looks in your throat and then says, "Oh, you have this." No, it takes time, right? It takes weeks, maybe months. There's a lot of questions. I can understand that a lot of people are very uncomfortable with it because it's very new. Someone that you don't know is asking you very private questions about your life, right? And if you're not up to this, it's maybe also hard for you. And then it even takes longer because if you're not honest there, then you're not going to progress, right? So you need to find also a therapist that you can have a conversation with friends because they're asking very a lot of questions. They're asking very direct questions, and you will sometimes have to think. Sometimes the answer just shows up some days later, maybe. But yeah, you're investigating first with a lot of questions. You will go back in your childhood, which is always the answer, I think, for a lot of things. And you never do this in your normal life. You never think about your life. Is there something that I'm doing now that is, and you don't even have to figure out, is it wrong or is it bad, or is it a bad attitude, is it a good attitude, whatever it is there something that you're doing now in your life that you are only doing because you were taught so when you were 6, not also not taught, but you
Right.
experienced it and you thought this was the wrong right way to do it, so from then you do it and no one ever told you, actually this is not really good what you're doing, maybe you can do it different. And yeah, so it took, like, with my therapy, the word ADHD didn't appear immediately, let's say after 1 or 2 months. Think also my therapist, which was maybe really good, didn't throw it in too early to not confuse me or not give me the experience of something like, so I know what's your sickness, right? Rather than telling you with everything that you experienced during the therapy, you actually find out what you have. Because if you then research what all these things are, they all lead to ADHD, right?
And you brought up a great point because diagnosis doesn't occur in a vacuum, right? We are a product and we are shaped by where we grew up and how we grew up. And for you, this was East Germany. Now, where order was virtue, where disorder meant discomfort. What messages did you get about discipline, order, or being different? And now, looking back at your childhood, and now that you have this ADHD lens, are there moments that now make sense to you that maybe didn't make sense back then? How are you processing all of that?
There's a lot. There's many. I don't know. There's no number of this. There's so many, right? So during therapy and everyday life still now, there's things that I experience and I think, oh wait, this is wow. I remember something from my childhood. I can connect it, right? It's really just that the connection is there now. And looking at East Germany, and at the time being a child, let me also say, okay, I grew up in the end of East Germany. Like my school started when East Germany was over, technically, physically, but obviously the culture was still there for many years. In some areas, it is still there now. So, for one example, is very simple from my school that I literally remember the words of. We were wearing, I think it was in first, second, or maybe third grade. So I was very young. So it's blurry. But I remember someone saying, we were talking and we were talking about another student. And it was said, like, oh, yeah, did you hear? They have ADHD. And it had this, like I said it now, it has this negative touch. And we also thought, oh, it's ADHD. Oh, so it's not that you were scared of them or something, but it was something negative, and it was an illness, and it was something. Oh, what did they? And from the pure wording, it was described as, oh, they have the lack of attention. In the German translation, it basically also translates to a syndrome that lacks of attention, and they're hyperactive or both, right? Something
Right.
like this. But we were also, as kids in that age, we had no idea to how to investigate this better and become a better objective way of seeing this, right? It was there and then it was it. And then something else that I realize now connected to this is, and it's very funny. So all my first school, how do you say this? What is it? What you receive at the end of the school year? Sorry.
When you graduate,
You,
or,
you have the notes like every year where the grades are on.
oh, yes, your report card.
Yeah, the report card. So in at least the very first 4 years, and the funny thing is, my mom still has these, right? I don't know if every mom is doing this, but my mom is. You can go now to my parents' house. She know where the folder is, and she will show you my first grade scorecard. And on all of them, the first sentence in the written review The first sentence was, and I'm not lying, Oliver is a good student, but he has problems with paying attention, which is now I know, right?
Yes,
And I
hello.
remember and but at that time, no one looked at it in the way, so why is he doing this?
Right,
Why is it? It was just that, yeah, that's his problem and let's work on it. Or that it was pushed to the parents, you got to do something about it. Sometimes he's just in his mind somewhere else. And when I remember one really important thing with my therapist, and it was first grade, and it's one of these memories that's very blurry, but you remember it. Sometimes things are they're just there. You will never forget them. That I had a window seat in the first grade in our classroom. First grade in Germany, you had all classes in one classroom. You almost never changed. And I had this window seat, which is great, but for ADHD people, not because there's a lot of things outside. So I was looking out of the window and I was seeing like whatever was their nature. And if teacher talks to me and caught me and not paying attention, that was awful. And it was also you were negative. You were like dumb school in front of everyone. So why are you not paying attention? Why are you looking out at the window? What's wrong with you? Oh, no, 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 no. So this all had a negative touch and you felt bad about it, right? Instead of
right.
someone actually trying to help you and say, okay, maybe you should investigate why this is, right?
So now that you know that ADHD is not a disease, that it's a neurodivergent condition, in many cases, it's genetic, do you approach it differently? And can you see any of these manifestations in any family members?
Yeah, obviously, right? It had to be come from someone. So, as I'm not living very close physically with my parents, I unfortunately did not have the time to talk with them for a very long time. So, during my therapy, I could only guess, or like I was talking with my therapist, and we could only guess basically, is the mom or the dad, or is it both? And funnily was that during my therapy, I was always thinking it is more my dad, and then lucky me was able to travel to Germany for a good, nice holiday in July. And then I was with my parents for quite a long time, the first time in 3 years. And yeah, and I realized very quick at the very first day, oh no, it's my mom. Oh my God, she is horrible. Like horrible in the most positive way of oh
Right.
my
Right. Was it post-diagnosis that you took this trip?
oh yeah. Yeah, yeah.
What did your family say about it? Did you share it with them?
So, yeah, I shared it with my mom, right? So my mom was a nurse like all her life, which I don't know how much it helped in that case. I have some parts of this being very strict and very untouchable for feelings I have from my dad. So my dad would be like rather not the person that I would talk with it about it, rather my mom. But yeah, I think also from the history, going maybe shortly back to this East Germany cultural thing, that it was maybe very hard for my mom in that time to even think about this. Could your son have something like this? Without not negatively saying, is your son sick? But thinking about this, do you want to confront yourself with this? Do you want to agree on doing a therapy? Who do you tell? Will you tell your friends, like your friends that you have? Like I'm talking now out of my mom's perspective. Do you tell your friends, I'm going with Ollie now to therapy? How would they react? So there's a lot of pressure from society that may prevent you from doing this. So saying this, I'm also can say I'm not mad at my parents or anything like, hey, why didn't you see this earlier? Because I know,
Right.
especially in these days, in these circumstances, there's a lot of societal pressure that just tells you, nah, I don't want to do this. And also, when your son is doing great, I was not bad in school. I did good. I did above average. So why would you do this? Why would you, as a parent, right, we can understand it. Why would you say, I got to check on his brain?
Yes, and also as we were talking briefly, chatting off camera, there's this whole societal prejudice towards these conditions, which we are now beginning to look at it differently. And it's about time that happened, right?
Mhm.
Where we are not stigmatized, we are not invalidated because of a neurological condition that is there from birth. And society is beginning to, in different regions of the world, society is beginning to look at it a little bit differently. And we need to keep talking about it. And that's why your story is so important to be told. When we talk about our experiences in the first person, and we can help other people see themselves in our experiences that leads them to be able to obtain information to live life more authentically, I think that's wonderful. So let me transition for a second and let's talk
Mhm.
about how ADHD shows up in the little details of everyday life. For you, it was rushing showers or saving your best clothes for a day that never came. And only later discovering the joys of colors and plants. So, could you share a few of these everyday ADHD moments, and how did a diagnosis change how you see them now?
Yeah. So the problem is that all the things that you discover, you knew before, right? It's nothing you discover, it's nothing new. It's like you knew of them before, but it's just a way of seeing them and seeing them, also understanding them that this little thing could mismanage your life in a bigger way. And yeah, let's maybe take the example of like a super random ADHD thing. So you have always this thing of perfectionism, right? For a lot of things, which is not a bad attitude in general. But I'm doing a bread. There's a bread, there's butter on it, and then you want to put cheese on it. That cheese is not formed like the form of the bread. This makes all sense. So normal people would just took two slices and put them on, and they will eat the bread, and they're going on happy with their life. ADHD people can't do this, right? So I am cutting two or one and a half slices of bread with exactly the form of the bread, and so it fits, and then I'm happy, and then I'm eating. So now you might say, or everyone might say, yeah, but it's not a bad thing, right? Okay, you will take longer with the bread, so go on. What's the issue? No, it's obviously not, but it's just an example of if you do this in a bigger scale on a lot of things, then that breaks you down, right? So it's not to get off these little things, but it is bigger because you do the same thing, the same structure of your brain that it needs things needs to fit in this because otherwise you feel uncomfortable. That is the bigger scale. And
Right.
and that is in a lot of things, and it can be in work life and in private life, and that's a good exception. And maybe to bring this back also with the shower, cutting showers, it's maybe also an example where other people might not understand. What do you mean? So when you shower all your life unknowingly, or you know it, but you don't even think about it very quick, just because you think showering is it's just to clean your body, right? So why would you spend more than 5 minutes on it, right? Or seven and a half, whatever you time it. And realizing that while you're showering, your brain is so busy to coordinate the movements of the shower that there's no space in the brain to enjoy the shower. And that's the problem with having a shower and enjoying the drops of water on your body instead of your brain being super busy with this. And if I speak about it, does it hurt or something? No, it does not. Like you don't feel it. Like all my life, it was not, my showers were not bad or it didn't feel uncomfortable, right? Let me say this, like my life in general was never uncomfortable, but it is better, right? That's maybe a good thing to say in general. Like after my diagnosis, it's not that oh my God, I'm a completely new person. I am like, my life doubled and tripled in fun. And before that, I was very upset and in my cave. No, but there's a lot of things that out of a sudden are like, oh, wow, this is how this is. And this is how this feels.
Well, that's what exactly one of the many advantages of coming to a diagnosis, because a lot of people say now, I am so many years old. Why do now that I've achieved this in life, why do I now want to get this diagnosis? Because it allows you to understand so many things about how your sensory overwhelm, how you process the world, how you see things. It allows you to see yourself through a very different lens with a lot more compassion and with a lot less guilt. And you begin forgiving yourself for all those times that you have used labels like this is not normal or this might appear weird. It's
Mhm.
not. It's how you process the world. It's a different way of navigating through life that your brain requires certain kinds of adaptations in order to feel comfortable. And the example of the shower, a lot of neurotypical people, for example, people who don't have a neurodivergence, they don't think about the shower. They just go into the shower and just get showered, right? But for many of us, it involves an entire process of neurosensitivity to get there because there are a lot of steps until you get to the point where you get into the shower. There is undressing. There is turning the shower on. There is stepping into the shower. There is picking the shampoo. And all of those mental processes can be overwhelming. And so that is why some of these tasks become difficult or overwhelming for some of us. You're correct that it is difficult to explain to someone who doesn't process the world that way. But it also doesn't mean that we are broken or that it's wrong. It is just different. And once you know that, I know that for me, Oliver, for me, Anita, taking a shower involves demanding the resources in my brain a lot more than other tasks, for example. Now that you understand that, you approach it in a different way. You approach it in a more gentle way. I don't know if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah. Less thinking about thinking, so to say. Yeah.
So let's turn to work for a moment, where ADHD can be a paradox. On the one hand, procrastination can be overwhelming. And on the other hand, perfectionism can stall you. But also hyperfocus, right? Those
Mhm.
bursts of energy and attention and passion that drives success. You found a motto, which I absolutely love: just start, perfect it later, right? So, how does ADHD play out for you in your work? How do you experience hyperfocus, both the gift and the challenge? And what helps you push through the procrastination aspect?
So for this also, I immediately when I found out about this, there was like a click and was like over looking at my recent work years, seeing, okay, oh, this happened, right? So I was working in a software company in Germany for over 10 years, so quite a long time. I made a very good career there. And there were sometimes projects that were very challenging, right? And I postponed them, right? In simply as, I want to do this on Tuesday. I'm doing it. And then it's Tuesday and you put it on Thursday and you postpone. And in that process, also, you ask yourself sometimes, or you feel bad because you think you're lazy, right? Until you find out that all this postponing is not because you're lazy, it is because you're overthinking the result. If you think work wise, there's a project, right? And here's the result. Your brain is here at this point. You're already perfectionism this, and you want to skip the way there, right? Which is an advantage because you know already what you want, everything, but it's so much here in that part, but then you have problems to get there and then you stall and then you will never get there. Or yeah, you will have one night and of super hyper focus, and then you do the work of 20 work hours in two, and then everything is done and it's good. You're also not really happy because you realize, damn, if I would have started this earlier, I could have made so many good things. And you're like, and then you're not super happy, right? Which is also an ADHD thing because when you're done, you already think of all the things that you could have done better, that could have been better. So you're really hard with yourself still when you're in this roller coaster of doing this again and again with whatever work it is, right? And yeah, that was it, it was funny looking at it back now. It's but no one knew. That was also something that I never talked obviously with my boss. It's also not something that I talked with my parents or something. Look, I had a project that started like I got the task like 2 months ago. Now yesterday in an overnight session, I did everything in 10 hours. And it's that would have helped, right? Or it's upsetting a little bit that there was no one that I could really talk about this.
So does
Um,
it help now to manage your time or your work or your approach to these things, knowing that you have ADHD? Do you have new tools that help you navigate these waters?
yeah, you still have to push yourself. There's this little boundary that you have to break through. But as you now know the history and what I just mentioned, this moment of realizing how good and maybe also how easy the project may be because you're really good, because your brain is good and you're not lazy. So it's easier now to break through this barrier, right? I'm still postponing some things at work. Well, it's very normal, but it's way less, right? And I'm rather now can see this in the most positive way. I'm rather saying that I'm not saying I'm lazy. No, I'm gifted and I know my power. I will use my superpower to solve this problem. And I'm looking happily forward to it, right? I'm not afraid. And yeah, that helped me recently a lot.
And giving yourself permission to feel and those days where you just can't, and not because you don't want to, but you just can't, give yourself permission to say, okay, so today or this moment or this hour, I can't, and that's okay. ADHD is not only about focus, it's also about emotion. And you've shared how hard it can be to regulate feelings in your relationship, those quick reactions, the overwhelm. And therapy reframed it for you, not as a failure, but as part of how you are wired. So, how has ADHD shaped your relationship with your partner? What has been the hardest part about emotional regulation, and how has therapy helped?
So one very simple thing that I learned, and it's funny thinking of you learn this with 40 or 41, is very simple. When you're angry in whatever situation, what has is cost, breathing helps. Full stop. So as an adult, you may had heard this before, right? This is not something new, but actually doing it, not feeling weird about it, that's the problem. So really standing in your own life and having and being angry with your partner about whatever it is, right? It doesn't matter. And then standing there and being able to tell yourself from a third perspective, hold on, breathe. Like doing the actual, and it's not, sometimes we use this as a just as a phrase. Hey, breathe, relax.
Yeah,
But no, you need to do it as a physical thing. And there's a lot of there's it's scientific. It's not just a thing. It's scientific. Because when you breathe, there's more oxygen. Your brain can work better, and then your brain will figure out and tell you, "Oh, you're angry. You don't want to talk now because things that you say in anger are not really what you think. They just coming out of you." So the physical possibility of doing this is something that you need to learn. And yeah, that is something that helped. And maybe a different example or a very simple ADHD example in partnerships is you're not listening to me, the phrase. So as we have in deficit in paying attention, so if you have a one-on-one conversation and someone talks, the funny thing is, I knew, remember this being there all my life. And it's funny. Now I can laugh about it so hard because how it had been for a lot of people that I talked before in my life, not just partners in any conversation. And it's mainly about like really a conversation. You sit on someone on the table, right? Or like eye to eye, and this person talks and you're listening, but then your brain goes, wow, that's an interesting picture there in the back, or someone's driving by, or like anything that distracts you, and or you calculate the hours that you have until you have to do your next thing. You know, your brain is somewhere else. But
yeah,
it's not a bad habit. It's not that you think, oh, that person is boring. I can't listen to it. No, it's not, right? It's just that you're unfortunately distracted. But you can imagine, everyone can imagine, that's very dangerous in a relationship, especially if
right,
you're the man and women have this to send men, they never listen, right? So it fits to this the stereotype of men, they never listen. And then you come and you absolutely don't listen. I talk to you and I can see that you're not listening because I can see your eyes are somewhere else. So that obviously brought a lot of problems. So now that my girlfriend knows, she just knows about it. She knows maybe when to stop, or she knows when we don't, it's not worth it now to have a serious conversation because your brain is somewhere else. But there's
right.
also very simple physical things that we can do. So there's these little balls that you can
They're
use,
called fidget toys. Yes.
these toys. So this is one simple example what you can do. So I can do different things now. So when we're at home, for me, it simply helps that I'm doing something while listening. And it's a
Right.
very simple scientific thing that you you're not able to just stand there and listen. You can't because your brain want to do more. So that means if you do something on the side, and for me, it's like I'm in the kitchen and I'm just cutting something and listening to you. And I can better listen to you when I do something on the side than when I'm just listening. That sounds very controversial, but it is the truth for me. And I figured it out now, right? And even if I just walk laps, I just walk around, I would be able to better listen to you as if I would sit and try to concentrate on your words. It's very
Right.
funny.
I absolutely agree, and it happens to many of us when we stim, when we have to engage in additional tasks while we're listening in order to process all the information that's coming in. It actually, as you say, helps us listen better, helps us understand better. I have learned to do a ton of different things that are not as noticeable when I'm talking with someone or sitting in a meeting, for example, that help
Mhm.
me regulate the sensory overwhelm without it being too overt. Isn't in a way that means that I am masking still. Because yes, you're correct. It does help you listen better when your brain is otherwise engaged. It demands it.
Yeah.
So let's look a little bit towards the future. A late diagnosis carries grief, but also relief, and you mourn lost time, but you also gain a new story. You have an opportunity now to live in your authenticity. And for you, ADHD came late, right? As opposed to as a child. How do you see your future now? Because you are living it as your new identity and not shame, which is wonderful. And now with ADHD as part of you, and what would you say to someone listening, someone who suspects they might have ADHD but hasn't been diagnosed yet?
Do therapy as if you would go to the gym or to do yoga or to do spa, right? So I will never forget the sentence from my therapist. When you're thinking of therapy costs money. It's also good. So you need to invest in this, right? And depending on whatever things you have in life, whatever your hobbies are, where you invest money, you may have to cut something off. But the same as you would do it for one of these activities that I mentioned before, you will take a risk that you think maybe it's not worth it, but maybe it is, right? And I can just tell anyone it is, right? I've never counted the money that I spend, and I hopefully will never do. But living in Mexico, I'm happy that I did it here. It would have been way more expensive in any Western countries, to be fair. So I was very lucky with this, but it is absolutely worth it. And you're investing in your life, you're investing in your future. If you think of like physical therapy is what you do with gym. You go to the gym to be healthy and your muscles that support your joints when you are old. So to say, so you do something for your future. And it's the same with you. Why would you not invest money for your mental health when you do the same for your physical health, right? That is something very normal to say, but I know there's still a lot of people out there that may say, like, how do I tell my parents? How do I tell my friends I go to
Yeah.
therapy, right? Oh God.
It, it's unfortunate that there's still a lot of stigma surrounding these issues. And broadly speaking, there's also stigma surrounding therapy as a whole. But that's also why it's important that we tell our stories, that we civilize these things, because times are changing. And it is important, as you say, that we take care of our mental health under a different lens and not a pathologizing lens and not a disease lens, but an
Mhm.
empowering lens. Oliver, your story shows that diagnosis isn't the end, it's the lens. Let me ask you something. If you had an opportunity to talk or write a letter or a short note to the 12-year-old self, Oliver, when he was 12 years old, what
Hmm.
would you tell him? Now, in retrospect, knowing everything you know about yourself and having experienced and lived through life, what would you want him to know? If there's an Oliver out there listening who's 12 years old and who might have ADHD.
Well, that is tough. But maybe first thing is I think I would tell myself to not be too hard with myself because that often led to uncomfortableness at childhood, right? Don't think everything that your parents is telling you is the only way to do it, is the plain truth. Even though you trust them, it's not. Find your own ways through life. And I don't know, maybe go to therapy when you think age you're ready to do it, right?
Yes.
You don't want to force yourself, but yeah, it's this is it. Just do it. Right.
So, in closing, Oliver, how would you summarize what you have lived through, what your experiences have been through this last year? If you could share with the listeners what it's been like, it would be wonderful.
I can just say my life changed in the most positive way that I've never expected to happen. I've never experienced something like this to deep dive into your childhood or in your whole life without seeing things negative. Hey, what have you done when you were young? Just seeing the things that happen and conclude out of it, why did this affect in the way you're doing it now? Also seeing at the same thing when I say my life is it is a positive change, not saying at the same time, all my life now was super trist and it's super sad until now, and now everything changed. No, it was also great. And everything that happened, like it was, and it was great the way it was. We can't go back in time, but we can make everything now more positive. You thrive of knowledge of something all your life, right? Every day you learn, right? Isn't it great to learn so much about yourself at once? Out of a sudden, you know who you are, why you do things, and how to use yourself as the super weapon with hyperfocus and with planning and being just like an absolute machine and problem solving, like figuring out, oh my God, I'm so much quicker in solving this than you. And then it's because of ADHD. And I'm so happy about that. Now I go around and use it as a super weapon instead of procrastinating and not using it good.
Or blaming yourself, castigating
Mm.
yourself
Yeah.
for things that you really didn't understand why were happening and the way they were happening. And now you have a name for it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's great. It just feels so much freedom, right? It's so much freedom and it's so nice. I think I personally never would have said like anything negative to ADHD people. I also had zero knowledge, right? But
Yes.
now I would run around and hug people and say, "You have ADHD? Cool. It's so great, isn't it?" Like I would ask, like, you're in a club, you're in a big club, and I would ask these people, "What do you also do this?" Haha, it's so funny. So I'm super happy of meeting people now, and yeah, it's just great.
That it's wonderful that you're sharing with us this idea of finding authenticity through your identity, and your newfound identity is a source of pride and joy, which is inspiring. And I want to thank you so much for taking the time to share your story with NeuroRebel, with me, with our listeners. And you really have an inspiring story to tell. And I want to thank you for your time.
I thank you. I'm very happy that I was here. And yeah, thank you so much.
Oliver's journey reminds us that late diagnosis isn't a tragedy, it's transformation. His story echoes what researchers like Michelle Mowry and Alan Littman have documented, that ADHD in adults, particularly those diagnosed later in life, involves a complex process of identity reconstruction and self compassion. Here's what makes Oliver's experience so illuminating. He didn't just receive a diagnosis, he received permission. Permission to understand why showers required so much mental bandwidth, why perfectionism could paralyze him, why his brain craved movement to listen properly, and permission to reframe decades of self criticism as a neurological difference. The statistics tell part of the story. Studies suggest that up to 75% of adults with ADHD remain undiagnosed, with women and people from rigid cultural backgrounds particularly likely to slip through the diagnostic cracks. But behind every statistic is a human being like Oliver, discovering that their quirks have names, their struggles have explanations, and their differences have value. His advice rings with wisdom earned through experience. Do therapy as if you would go to the gym, because understanding your neurodivergent brain isn't self indulgence, it's self advocacy. It's the difference between surviving your differences and thriving because of them. If you recognize yourself in Oliver's story, the rushing showers, the hyperfocus sessions, the emotional overwhelm. Know this: your experience is valid, your struggles are real, and your brain isn't broken. It's beautifully, brilliantly different. Thank you for listening to NeuroRebel. If this episode resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear Oliver's message that it's never too late to understand yourself more deeply, and that diagnosis can be the beginning of your most authentic self. Until next time, keep questioning the narratives that no longer serve you, and keep celebrating the magnificent complexity of your neurodivergent mind.